So sustainable shipping is something that I've been thinking about lately because I just noticed that a lot of food that we get in our supermarkets is imported, and so I'll be talking more about it in the presentation. But here, damn, this thing is just why? Let me try that one more time. Okay, I'm a PhD student at this institute called Institute for Advanced Sustainability Studies in Potsdam, and please don't expect hi-fi stuff from me because I don't feel like I'm a PhD student now. I feel more like this. I feel like I've never sailed on a cargo ship. I feel like I'm not an expert, and I'm super nervous at the moment, especially because of this technical glitch I'm having right now. This thing is going out of control. So let's hope for the best. So the structure of the talk is first. Hey, hold on, man. Okay. First, it's the history and evolution of shipping, and it's going to be for 20 minutes, and there'll also be a quiz. Can you just stop that, please? Okay, fine. Let it go. Oh, damn, this is just... What's happening? Okay, good. First I'll just start about the history and how shipping used to be like 500 years ago. And there'll also be a quiz that's going to be hopefully interesting. And totally it's for 20 minutes. Then I would need a really long break, like 20 minutes, because the second part is more important, more sensitive, more interesting, and incomplete. So I really need to complete it. I need about 20 minutes to complete that. So second part, please be back, and it's going to be even more fun. And then after that, we can take more break, and we can continue eating and have a group discussion more about what we've just seen in the two presentations that we had so far. And lastly, you can give me some feedback about how I'm presenting. You can also look at my recording online, which I would be uploading it later. Yeah, that's it. And important guidelines are this. This may have sensitive content, and so please ask questions mostly in the end. Do you have a notepad? Anyway, so if you have something to note, please note things down rather than asking in between. Of course, if you don't understand any word, you can just interrupt me and ask me to repeat it. But mainly what I'm trying to say is, if something is wrong, please just keep it to yourself. Thanks. That would be really great. Oh, thanks, Philip. He's brought some papers and pens, so if you want to note down something, you can go ahead. Or you can also, if you trust your mental memory, you can also make a mental note of those things. Great. And then, secondly, please remember that I'm not an expert. This is mostly my line of thought and some independent research. And this is based on experiences from my home country, which is India, and after moving here, what I really felt. Okay? And I may not have time to acknowledge in the end, so I'm just giving acknowledgements now. Thank you so much to the organizers. Plant-based, that is, I just want to take some prominent names here. Philip and Neely, I don't know how to pronounce her name, sorry. Neela, Tata, and Victoria, and Felix. And who else? Who else? What? Yeah. Then, offenes Wohnzimmer in space, thank you so much, especially to Bina. Is Bina here?
No.
Alright. Wherever you are, thank you so much. And then, you'll see that in my presentation, I just ripped off some clips from videos that I saw on YouTube. So, thanks to those channels. One is Casual Navigation, Flying Kill, okay, Vox, NFB, and Noah Documentaries, and many others from which I got these clips from. So thanks to those channels. And other sources, like this book, Ocean Atlas, or in German it's called Meer Atlas. and sorry, in German it's called Mir Atlas, Midas Atlas, yeah, Midas Atlas. So this book gave me so much information and so many steps for this presentation. And lastly, this book about truth by Hector McDonald, which says that a given truth has many sides to its reality, to the real reality. So I will try to present as many sides of the reality as possible, so wish me luck. Thank you so much. And lastly, thank you all for coming. Unfortunately, I cannot write all of your names here, so thank you all. So why I started thinking about this is the reason. Winters in Germany are very dark and depressing, and nothing grows, and winter is coming, so brace yourselves. But winter in South India, where I'm coming from, there's basically no winter. And the winter season, that is January, is a harvest season. We get all the crops, and we get rice, sugarcane, coconuts, you name it, you have it. Of course, not apples, but yeah, mainly the produce is extracted during the winter season, January, February. And so that made me thinking, okay, when I'm moving to Germany, how can I survive the winter in Germany? Yeah? You guys will all be asking yourselves now. Yeah, and mainly I was concerned about food and warmth. Food, I know that nothing grows here, so am I going to be hunting polar bears or something like that? But yeah, I just gave a little thought into it, and I thought, yes, both of them can be handled. Firstly, people used to handle, people now we're getting food basically from supermarket. And, don't go out of control, buddy, please, don't. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so people used to get, now we're getting food from supermarket, and we're getting warmth from internal heating and water supply. Hot water supplies, like you just turn the tap to the left and you get hot water. It's as simple as it is nowadays. But back in the day, like around 600 years ago, what we usually call dark ages, how was it back then? Heating was provided by ovens, which are usually coal-based, and a lot of dirty stuff goes in there. And it's used for furnaces and baking, and also for socializing. Is there a oven here in this office one somewhere?
An old one, yes.
Underground? Okay, is that why we're getting heating now? Or?
Yeah. Now we're getting heating from the ground, but there's also an oven.
The old oven that is not being used nowadays?
Here's the old one in the corner.
No, it's a new one, not the old.
Great.
It's a new
But it's not like 600 years old. Like 600 years old is like, it's going to be like what you see there, mummified fossils of people. but yeah, it used to be really primitive, and the fuel that goes into the oven is also quite dirty. So yeah, that's how we had our civilization started. So we need to remember that. And then what do people used to eat? So mainly it's bread and meat, and then what you see here, that's sauerkraut and pickled vegetables, and then for sweet it's marmalade. That's all you get during wintertime. And of course, it's just some meat and some bread and some pickled vegetables and marmalade, and of course, don't forget this one, beer. Yeah, so there was basically too much uncertainty of the availability of food, whether this food can last throughout the winter or not. So this was how things were back in the day. We need to remember that. And now let's start off with the history of shipping. Why ships were used? The purpose was firstly war and conquest, and even now they're being used for war and conquest. I'll tell you that later. And then it's used for exploration. So if you think that you might find some island somewhere north, you can just go there with a bunch of people in a boat and see if there's an island where you can stay and colonize. That's what Vikings used to do with all the Arctic sailing and stuff. And then trade, that's important. So if you have to get if you have to get some apples from Germany to Greece, and if you want to get some barley or some grains from Greece to here. So trade used to be facilitated mainly from ships. And then nowadays, we're also using it for commute. We're using it to provide supplies. Now, if you want to maintain a research facility in somewhere in, let's say, Antarctica, without shipping, it's not possible to maintain a research facility over there. So shipping is really important to provide supplies over there. And lastly, parties. This is nowadays. Back in the day, no, that's not so heard of. So let's see really how it used to be back in the day when. Why is it not going? Yeah, okay. War and conquest, how it used to be back in the day. I'll just show you some clips from. It used to be brutal. As I told you, there will be sensitive content, so be aware of that. So, you might notice, people row the boats by hand. And if someone is really pissed off, look what they're doing. They just throw the people and row the boats by their hand. And even worse.
Ship ready, Consul. Triangle.
Yeah. Now you might notice if you want to increase the speed, in videos you can just say 1.25x or 1.5x, but there someone has to really tune the drums, and the slaves, they had to really row in that speed, otherwise they're going to be executed or killed or whatever. So that is how shipping used to work back in the day. So we have to remember that there was rampant slavery back in the day, and then there was extreme brutality, as you've seen. And also, another thing that we need to remember is that dying for the kingdom was considered really virtuous and really noble back in the day. So, and the next one is exploration, why shipping used to do. And again, you have to remember that all of these ships were rowed by slaves and by hand. And now, in the Renaissance era, there was a real requirement for art and sculpting, especially outside the domain of the church and the Pope. So people really were into art and sculpting and exploration. But main reason for this exploration is to find trade routes to East Asia, where they used to get more of these supplies like silk or cotton or rice, these kinds of fancy exotic stuff. And back in the day also, just a moment, I'll just use the pointer here. Yeah, so this route, what you see, it's called the Silk Route, where silk and many other things, porcelain, or the plates that you're carrying now is made of porcelain, and that came from China and Japan. And all of these fancy stuff were traded by road. And but the Italian people, they really wanted to get a easier route to go to India and Indonesia and these countries, and they are called Indies. And so, thanks to this guy, thanks to this route, and thanks to this guy who tried to go west to find Indies, and that's how we came across. That's how the European people came to know about West Indies, or now we can call them as Caribbean, and we get all of our coffee and chocolate and these tobacco, tea, these kinds of exotic products. Okay, and that led to colonies and plantations. So plantations never used to be there back in the day. But now, especially to ship these vastly cultivated products like coffee and tea and tobacco, large portions of land needs to be allocated just for cultivating these. And so I can just give you some small examples, like coffee, tea, cotton also was a plantation, cacao, or chocolate is what you call, and then tobacco. And basically anything pleasing and exotic shall be shipped. So that's the whole idea behind plantations. So you grow things on a large scale, and then you collect them, put them in a ship, and send it to Europe. That was the whole idea of colonies and plantations. And we need to remember that even slaves were shipped, meat was shipped, lard, or you might call the thing that you use for lubricating the bicycles, that white thing that sticks, sorry, not white, the black thing that sticks to your hand when you repair the chain of the bicycle, it's called lard. It's made from pig's fat. That also used to be shipped. And then metals and like gold, silver, indigo, opium, even all these kinds of drugs. Weed is also shipped. So the main intention of colonies and plantations was to facilitate this uninterrupted supply of fancy goods. So that's where shipping started. And how ships were evolving back in the day, in 1380, I just got it from a game console that was available on Google Image Search. So they used to be kind of primitive like this, just one match. And then now, as it improved, more degrees of freedom in the direction and stuff, and then more degrees of freedom, and even more, like, ships got bigger and bigger, that's all. And now, okay, this comes as a surprise because now we're starting the quiz. And don't get disappointed, we're going to be learning a lot from this quiz as well. And now why am I showing this pumpkin? So I think it was Neela who wrote that we're making kubus quiche, I think that's what it's called, right? Kubus quiche, yeah? And when I hit translate on Facebook, it wanted to say pumpkin quiche, but it says pumpkin quiz. So there you have it, pumpkin quiz. So let's start with pumpkin quiz, with pumpkins, okay? So where are these vegetables or fruits natively from? Let's start with pumpkin. Where is it from? Can you guess?
South America.
Sorry?
South America.
North America, yes. But yeah, I can do it. North America. Then apple. Where's apple from?
Asia, China.
Europe.
Yeah.
China.
South America?
No.
Really?
Yeah, I can say Middle East, but precisely it's from Turkey. Turkey was the origin of apples. Then chestnut. Which das ist Kastanien. No, yeah, it is from Europe. Actually, it is from Germany. So yeah. And then tomatoes. Where are tomatoes from?
Aubergine.
Oh yeah, aubergine. Sorry, thank you for reminding. Aubergine. Where's aubergine from? No, not South America.
North America.
India. Yes. From where I come from. Then tomatoes. South America. Yes. Macadamia. Do you know what macadamia is? Australia, exactly. Coffee. Africa, someone said Africa, not Africa. Yes, there's an interesting history for coffee.
Yeah.
So it was growing like some wild wheat crop in Ethiopia, and some guy just tasted it and basically got high with coffee, and he tried to make money from it. He traded it with the what is it, Mecca and this Islamic world, and now they started trading coffee with the Vatican, and but the Pope originally rejected it, saying, "Oh, this is the drink of the devil. I'm not drinking it." And but then finally, somehow, someone convinced him to drink a little bit of it, and he got high and said, "Oh yeah, you guys can also drink." And some people speculate that coffee was the origin of Renaissance movement because people were high and I also want to make art and I want to go explore. So coffee was there, and it was also a really good drink during the winter time. That's how they used to survive winter. After coffee was there. Yeah. Next, barley. Where's barley from? Barley is the crop that you use to make beer. So,
China.
it can be grown in Europe, but it's not originating from there. Egypt, yes.
North Africa.
Yes, also North Africa. Middle East, yeah. Mainly Middle East and also around Middle East, like North Africa and Egypt. Yeah. Potato. Where's potato from?
South America.
South and Central America. Yes, that's right. The rice. That's right.
India.
China and India, that's right, yeah. Good. Sorry? Potatoes are from South and Central America, yeah. So, remember, before shipping and exploring those continents, we never knew tomatoes, we never knew potato, we never knew coffee and tobacco and bananas and, yeah, maybe all of these things were not known. So, next. Cool. Yeah. How did sailors find their coordinates when they were lost at sea? Firstly, latitude. Yeah, stars. How exactly? First, latitude. Yeah. How did they find their latitude? Compass, yes. Later, after compass was invented, yes, compass. But before compass was invented, how were they really finding out where they were exactly? Sextant, yes. How did they use their sextant?
What?
I mean, what did they look at?
Stars.
Stars, yes. North Star, someone said North Star, yes. And during the day?
The sun.
The sun, yes. But God only knows how they found out where they were when the sky was very cloudy. So I have no clue how they found out where they were when they couldn't see stars and they couldn't see the sun, so they were lost in the sea. So they really have to wait for the clouds to clear. Okay, there's a really good illustration for this. It's kind of funny too, so just listen to it carefully.
Navigators knew that the height of the noonday sun varies. On the equator, it would be high in the sky, but in the far north, the sun remains low on the horizon. By measuring the angle between the sun and the horizon, latitude could be calculated, if the navigator could survive the hazards lurking in his own instruments.
As a cross staff, this was actually designed for use on land, and it was adapted for use at sea. One of its problems is that one has the staff held in one guy, and with the ship moving up and down, you not only get blinded by the sun, but you also get badly bruised on the eyebrow. So it's not the easiest of instruments to use.
18 degrees north.
Did you get that? The ship keeps going up and down, and still they're trying to use the sextant. Oh, where's the sun? Where are the stars? Wow, it used to be a really tricky job for them. And now longitude. Can you guess how did people find their longitude? Okay, then let the documentary say.
60 degrees in 24 hours, or 15 degrees each hour. To know the longitude, one must know the time in two places at once. If a sailor knew when it was noon at the home port, Greenwich, England, and then had to wait 1 hour until it was high noon on board his ship, he would know that the ship was 15 degrees west of Greenwich. If the sailor had to wait 2 hours for the sun to reach its high point, he was 30 degrees west. The challenge was knowing the time at the home port while sitting hundreds or thousands of miles away.
That was even more tricky, as you've seen. You have to calculate the difference in the time when the sun is the highest in the horizon. And then you'll see usually in the home port, the sun at the horizon is at 12 o'clock, but if you see the sun is highest at 3 o'clock, then you are 45 degrees to the west. So that's how you calculate the longitude. And this was very important because if you calculate the location wrongly, then you might end up somewhere next to an iceberg or next to an island, and there will be a disaster like Titanic or something like that. So yeah, sailing used to be really, really tough back in the day. And what we are enjoying now with GPS is like a big, big luxury if they knew that GPS was possible. So yeah. The next question is refrigerated ship. First ship refrigeration happened in 1876, and this particular ship transported something from New Zealand to England. What was it shipping? Okay, just guess this. You can just guess. Good guess, but you mean the kiwi birds or the kiwi?
Sheep?
Sorry?
Sheep?
You're getting close. Something related to sheep, yes.
Mutton?
Not exactly mutton, but meat, yeah. So they were actually shipping a whole ship of meat from New Zealand to England because English people thought that they really required meat to nourish themselves or something like that. And so meat was shipped all the way from New Zealand to England. I was also blown away by reading this. Yeah. Okay, the next one. This guy revolutionized the shipping industry by commercially introducing what? Containers, yeah. The answer is in the background here. So yes, this guy was responsible for containerization. Yeah, that's it. That's the end of the quiz. So summary, we've got from rowing slaves to sailboats to heavily motorized container ships. We got from sextants to compasses, as she was pointing at, to GPS now. And we got the ships from bulk cargo to containerization. And then we got it from pasture lands to plantations. And now we're having it from regional food to global food. That's the end of the first part of the presentation. Now I need a long time to really set things for the second part, because that's where a lot of tricky things come up. We need to know where this heavy motor and containerization is taking us and where these plantations are taking us. So take a break, refill your plates, and see you in 20 minutes or even more. Any questions? Alright, thank you so much. Best luck. The chocolate, and I don't really know what comes from where and what goes where. So let's give it a try. Is there some music?
Yes.
Great background. Pleasant violin. Okay, so one thing we need to know now is that ships are huge. 397. You can fit a whole TV tower in Alexanderplatz into that ship. Ships are really big. Here's a small illustration. You can see how big ships are. And now you can see ships weigh 200,000 tons or 200,000 kilograms. And the engine power that it has to operate on in order to push the ship ahead is 109,000 horsepower. That's a lot. But when you compare it with airplanes and cars, of course it's more than cars, because it also carries cars in it, but the horsepower is less than the planes. That's something unique about ships, is that it doesn't require as much horsepower as planes. So that's why I think ships are not so thirsty because the horsepower is less than airplanes. And if you also see the horsepower per ton of load that ships carry is much less than cars. So that's what makes these giant container ships so efficient and reliable for carrying for trade. So yeah, that's the whole idea behind showing you this graph. But although ships are not so thirsty, which means although ships don't consume so much fuel, the fuel that they consume, they're very noisy. They're very noisy. Not to us, we can't listen to ships now. But who gets affected by ships are these sharks and whales and all the marine life. So it's like this. Water is a very efficient sound transmitter, and deep ocean animals, they rely on sound to communicate. Of course, we also rely on sound to communicate, but even visually we do communicate. But deep ocean animals, like even if they want to see, let's say, bread, we can look at bread and say, this is bread, it can be delicious. But animals deep under the water, they have to make some sound like, and then they can make okay, that's bread. So that's how they find that it's bread. Yeah, maybe if there are some opera singers, they can do that sound much better. Yeah, anyway. So ships can be extremely noisy for them, and that's illustrated really well in this video.
Experiment in 1991. Sound emitted from Heard Island was picked up at 16 sites in the Atlantic, Pacific, and Indian Oceans.
It turns out that one of the most common noises in the entire ocean that can be picked up almost anywhere these days sounds like this. It's the sound of boating. Noise from ship traffic has doubled every decade since the 1960s.
So basically, anywhere you go, the ambient noise in the ocean is dominated by anthropogenic sound. Let's say I made a measurement 30 years ago, and now, if I went to the same place and made the same measurement, it would be 10 dBs or more higher sound level than what I measured when I started my career. That's spooky.
That's a huge problem for animals that use sound as their primary sense. Just listen to this audio of how noise from a passing boat totally drowns out dolphin communication.
So you must notice that this red is the noise from the boat, and the white is the dolphins' communication, what dolphins sound like. And the noise is so, the noise from the boats is so much that you can't really speak. It's just like some ambulance passing by and you are like, oh, why is this ambulance going? So it's something like that, but it's not an ambulance for the dolphins, it's something that is really threatening to them. So this is what goes behind in the strips. And another thing is,
In 1991.
oh wait, okay, yeah. The fuel that the ships use, it's very dirty. You can see it on this map. This is the air pollutant emissions from a lot of shipping routes. Basically, you can make out where the shipping routes are based on just the air pollution map. You can just see that there's a shipping route from somewhere in Brazil to Europe, or there are a lot of shipping routes through the Panama Canal in over here, or a lot of shipping routes through Suez Canal to Europe. And you can also notice that the shipping air pollution is kind of comparable to air pollution of where people live. So ships are really dirty, and you can also find a lot of articles online showing that shipping air pollution from shipping can also corrode some structures that are close to the coastline. So yeah, that's something still to be improved with the fuel that is used in the ships. Why they use such dirty fuels is because there are no police in the ocean. So if you're driving an old polluting car over here, you can say, okay, near the city center, these kinds of cars are not allowed. But in the ocean, nobody cares, so you can use any kind of fuel. You can also basically catch some fish and burn them and use them as fuel. So yeah, that's also possible. So nobody is there to look around and see what's happening, what you're doing in the ships when you're somewhere in the middle of the ocean. So yeah, that's one thing. Lastly, seafarers. This is not the last one. Next one is the last one. Okay, seafarers are people who are doing the maintenance duties in the container ships, and their job description is this: months of being away from the family. So if they have to transport, let's say, cotton from India to Netherlands, and they are carrying all this cotton in this container ship. So this container ship would take about 2 to 3 months to reach Europe, and so all of these 2 to 3 months they have to just basically live in the ship. So months of staying away from the family, and there's no internet. I've been living away from my family for 1.5 years now, but I talk to them every day because I've got internet. But these people, no, they just have to load hard drives of movies and stuff like that to keep them entertained. And of course there's seasickness associated with long marine travel just for moving containers from one coast to another. So that's all there in the job description, and there's also this in their job that they need to face. Let's check this out. It's a very rough sea, and look what happens to the ship. You see what's happening there? The ship is like up and down, and so imagine I'm showing this over here, and then the projector screen is moving because it also has wheels down there. And so if you're on the ship, it's really difficult to lock this projector thing down. So they're actually having some infrastructure like hooking it to the ground so that it does not move, these kinds of things. But still, it's really difficult to just live in ships for so long, and yeah, that's there. But remember, it's much better than the slave ships where slaves were just rowing the boats. So this is like much better, but still. You can find mostly these seafarers, they come from developing countries like Philippines, mostly Philippines, Malaysia, Thailand, Cambodia, or sometimes even India. And they're not coming from these developed countries in Europe or US or Canada. The reason is because, well, one of the reasons I can just show you where this Filipino seafarer says.
Mostly, there's one way you can tell whether a person is a seafarer or not.
Yeah, the secret way.
Yeah.
To tell, and everything anybody walks on the street, you can observe giant containers. Okay, I want to know.
First thing you need to check is this big backpack.
Oh, there you go. This is
a
a small backpack.
Yeah, this is a small one, but you know, this guy's always wearing big backpacks because the dock has a lot of stuff inside. Yeah. Second, seafarers wear like this branded shirt, like thank you, or even this.
How big is the group?
We're like 31. When we report to the office, we're at our should wear like clothes. And then the shoes, meters. A lot of seafarers like to wear this Nike shoes.
Sneakers. Like comfortable shoes.
Like this, also this basketball shoes, the Jordans and stuff.
So if you see somebody walking on the street with a big backpack, a Nike shirt and Nike shoes, you can say with 100% certainty that is
Not 100%.
So now you know why people voluntarily want to do this job. They get this branded stuff and some kind of a better life than they're normally used to in their home countries. So it's like, yeah, they can show off, like, look, I have some branded backpack and Nike shirt and Nike shoes and these kinds of cool stuff. Yeah, so, but of course if you say, okay, we'll give you Nike shoes and Nike shirt, definitely Europeans or Americans would not want to subscribe for such jobs. They would want to go for maybe, I just want to experience how container shipping would be like. So, yeah, these kinds of things. But yeah, the main point that I'm trying to make is the lower class of maintenance workers in ships mainly come from developing countries, and the job prospects are pretty harsh when compared to people living on land, inland. So yeah, that is one thing. Lastly, okay, this is something all of you have to just brace yourselves for, because shipbreaking is really heartbreaking. Yeah, this is the last slide of my main part of the presentation. After this, there will be quiz. But this one, yeah, hold on tight. If you don't find somebody next to you, just make sure you find someone, because this is going to be pretty graphic and also pretty. If you're sensitive, close your eyes, okay? And I've only selected those that part which is not so graphic. So yeah, it's even worse than this. So let's get started.
The state of Gujarat is the birthplace of Mahatma Gandhi. Yet today it is less a symbol of peace than a rallying cry for reform. The shipyards are a toxic wasteland. Reports of their horrors draw international attention that threatens to shut down the industry. The ships being scrapped today were built in the 1970s, before asbestos and PCBs were banned. Heavy metals were used in their paints. Some carried radioactive material. These substances are released with every cut. The sand, the dust, the air are full of it. Countries like Canada have banned the export of toxins under an international treaty called the Basel Accord. The murky sail of old ships slipped under the radar until 1998, when two journalists won a Pulitzer Prize for exposing it. Then Greenpeace scientists released a shocking report.
Extremely high levels of all kinds of toxins. If we would find these toxins in the West, it would require cleanup, settlement. An average ship can easily have 20 tons of asbestos on board the ship. 600 ships a year, that would make 12 million kilo of asbestos being put on the beaches. You don't need 1 kilo to get a damaging effect on your health. That's the thing with toxic waste, with hazardous waste. In very minimum amounts, they can have devastating effects to the health of people.
Ship recycling is a eco-friendly. The only question is arising, what will happen? In old time, asbestos was never considered as hazardous. Permitted to use. Fishing was permitted to use. Heavy metal was permitted to use. Nobody said anything. But due to change of the environmental system and the thinking of the people, the things which were never considered hazardous in past is considered to be hazardous. Now the question is, it is existing in the ship. So somebody has to handle it. Whether we handle it or somebody else handles it. So there is no choice of it. Only way is a question is how to better handle it.
Another states association is faced with a dilemma. If India enforces environmental laws, third world competitors who don't will take the business away. And how can the West enforce such double standards when shipbreaking was deemed too hazardous and expensive to do there in the first place?
तो एक बात में रहता है, मगर लंबे अरसे तक जो ये काम करते रहे हम, तो वहाँ जहरीले गैस से ये सब होने से हवामान का प्रदूषित वातावरण के लिए वातावरण के हमारे बदन में फेफड़े सड़ जाएंगे, ये सब तो है ही, और आँखों में भी नुकसान होते हैं।
Pneumoconiosis is a learned disease which happens in most industrial sector areas where there are lots of fumes, gases which is being inhaled constantly. It is like smoking 10 to 15 packs of cigarette a day all the time.
The shipyard owners pay this doctor. His advice to the workers? Work upwind.
While doing the gas cutting, he should remain in the opposite direction to the wind. Wind should just go away. There is lot of breeze on the seaside. It will definitely harm less to him.
A lang has become a metaphor in the struggle between the third world and the first. Between the poor and the rich. In boardrooms far away, solutions are pondered. Can shipwrecking become clean? Who will pay?
Yeah. Who will pay? Yeah, that's the whole documentary about. If you are in shock, please take your time to relax and settle down. Take a deep breath. So are you ready? Yeah. The whole context in this documentary and also this small clip is that shipbreaking is very, very hazardous because the ships that were built in the 1970s are still being used, and those ships had heavy metals like asbestos or mercury, which are very toxic. So if you have to break it and recycle it, that's going to be a very hazardous affair. And so most European countries and even basically the developed world, North America, Canada, Europe, it's costly to handle this kind of an affair, to recycle a ship. So they just give it to the developing countries like India, Bangladesh, Thailand, Pakistan, for these kinds of things. And impoverished people who have nowhere else to go, they just come to this shipbreaking yard, and all they do is like cutting the metal, trying to extract how much ever they can. And yeah, they also use really cheap methods just to extract whatever they can from the ship that is remaining over there. So that's what makes it really hazardous. The of the airplane is very, very organized, and yeah, all that they can extract is extracted, and the fuselage of the airplane is used like some house or something like that. But this is even more tricky because nobody would want to live in a ship which is 50 years old. So that's what makes the shipbreaking industry so graphic and so shocking to most of us. And yeah, what else did I want to say about shipbreaking? Yeah, this is just one part of the whole documentary. If you watch the whole documentary, you can find even more shocking things like people losing their legs or burning their back, something like that, because this kind of a you must have seen that the person is not even wearing some helmet or something. He's just covering his face with a cloth. So if that's the kind of security standards that are being imposed over there, then it's basically a cheap way of extracting whatever they can. And if there are some environmental regulations put by the government saying, okay, you have to ensure this much safety, you have to give this much money, there's some minimum wage, these kinds of things, Then shipbreaking becomes much more costly, and developing countries won't be able to afford, and so the whole shipbreaking industry will collapse. So that's one of the things that really limits shipbreaking industry. So it's really a deep point to think about. Now, okay, back to the presentation. Now again, it's quiz time. Are you guys ready? So, do you want to take another break after this intense? If you want to take another break after this intense explanation about shipbreaking, maybe you can, yeah. I have a few quiz questions for this part of the presentation as well. Alright, let's get started. The number of containers, typically how many containers can be loaded in today's container ships? Typically, how many? Just guess some number.
5.
5 containers?
Guess the number.
Good guess.
5,000.
Sorry?
5,000.
Not enough. Anyone? What?
100,000.
That's too much. 100,000 is too much.
10,000.
Yes, good. Around 10,000. Yeah. So back, it used to be in 2005 itself. It used to be 10,000, and now it's gone to 22,000 containers. So that's the amount of cargo that we can transport from maybe from Hong Kong to Berlin. Yeah. So yeah, ships are huge. And the crew, how many crew are required? How many people are there to maintain that ship?
10?
A little more than 10. 30, yeah, around 30 to 40. Not more than 50. So, yeah. But still, the seafarers face a lot of problems in that, and they need to do all kinds of odd jobs and stuff like that in ships. Then, yeah, what's the most traded natural product?
Banana.
No.
Sand.
Oh, really?
Sand?
Interesting. No, not sand.
Tea.
Grain.
Not tea.
Grain. Oil.
No. Only 50 people. Yeah, back in the day, humans were traded as slaves, yes, but of course not nowadays. But yeah.
Coffee.
No.
Cotton.
No.
Orange.
No.
Coal.
No.
Animals.
You're getting close.
Pig.
Meat.
Meat, yes, but what meat?
Pig.
No.
Beef.
Oh, sorry.
Beef.
No. Okay.
Chicken.
Fish. Yes. Actually, the fishing industry is also kind of horrible. Most of us also might have come across what happens in shipping industry. Fishing industry. Yeah, in the fishing industry, it's like they use a lot of advanced technology to catch as many fish as possible, and while catching, they also have something called bycatch, which means they want to catch one kind of fish, but they end up also catching some whales and sharks and stuff like that. Yeah, our rock star. Yeah, yeah. So and the methods that they use to extract those many fishes is one thing. It's fascinating and also terrifying sometimes. So maybe we can come up with just another presentation exclusively about how fishing is done. Yeah, that's good. Okay. Do you know the answer for that? Okay, what's the full form of Hapag in Hapag-Lloyd? I'll give you a clue. It used to be a shipping company from Hamburg to America. So, what's HAPAG? It's a German acronym.
Maybe something like Hanseatische something Gesellschaft?
No, it's
Pazifik.
not Gesellschaft. Wait, is it Gesellschaft? No, it's not Gesellschaft. But I gave you a clue. It's from Hamburg to America.
The Pacific.
No. But yeah, I gave you the first clue. It's Hamburg in America, so it's HA is Hamburg, Amerikanisch, and then PA, and then G is not Gesellschaft, not Gemeinschaft, something, another G-shaft.
Das Genossenschaft?
Ja, Genossenschaft, genau. What is the PA in the...
Pennsylvania?
No. So what are these things called? The shipments? Auf Deutsch. Paketen? Yeah, genau. So it's Hamburg. Oh, it's Gesellschaft. Oh no. Paketfahrt. Aktiengesellschaft. Sorry, I thought it was Genossenschaft. Yeah. They used to operate this trade between New York, New Jersey, the east coast of the US to Hamburg. So that's this. Yeah, it's not a fascinating question, but I had to ask because I had to ask something. Okay. Then, so in this book, in this book, in the English version of this book, this is one of the chapters, and that's the introduction for the chapter. And it says shipping routes are world's arteries, and ships are its blood cells. So arteries are the blood vessels that carry blood from heart to the cells of the body. So shipping routes are that. But I want to ask you, but I think that ships are also veins of the body. So veins are like the blood vessels that carry the dirty blood from cells back to the heart. So ships are also veins, and I want to know how. What do they carry? What do the ships carry? So as arteries, waste, exactly. What can you elaborate? Garbage from where to where?
From the developed countries into less developed countries.
Yes.
China, India.
Yes, exactly. So a lot of exports from the developed countries are, if they're not able to fill in those containers, instead of sending them empty, they just fill it with some garbage and they label it as recycling raw material. And then they send it to developing countries like India, China, Malaysia, as I said, Philippines. Yeah, that's good, man. Yeah. Right. Is that next one? Last one? Okay, yeah. Climate warming routes. So global warming can open new sea routes. Where? Yes, Canada as well. Where exactly?
The northern part.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, right. So the Arctic sea ice is melting. Basically, the Earth is balding. So that opens new sea routes from, let's say, Russia to Norway or China or Canada to where? Somewhere up north you can find a lot of sea routes opening up because of Arctic sea ice melting. And then is this the last one? Okay, recently there's a solar ship. It's not a container ship, it's just a small party ship kind of a thing. What I wanted to ask you here is, you see the middle of the hull is not touching the water. What's the purpose of this?
Less friction.
Yeah, glad to meet you, man. What do you want? Yeah, okay, I know. Do you want to press this? Press here. Okay. Good boy. Okay, what's the answer? Why?
Less noise?
Less noise, good, but it's not exactly.
Less energy needed.
Yes, less energy, but why less? Why would that need less energy?
Less friction?
Yeah, exactly. There's less contact between the ship and the water, so that's why there's less friction, and so less energy and less noise. Yeah.
It's more
Press this button, man. Here, drunken. Harder. Look, Ma. Oh, is this the last one? Oh yeah, I think. Okay, that's. Okay. Anyway, I just wanted to say you that this is just a very brief introduction to what I discovered just by contemplating and searching about shipping. But there's a lot to uncover over here. I didn't talk about plantations and how the exotic stuff like bananas and chocolate and coffee and tobacco are cultivated. Yeah, it is a touchscreen laptop, so you can touch on it. Yeah, so hopefully I get a chance to present another time when I get more information about how trade works and how this exotic produce is being produced. And yeah, have fun with it. Yeah, thank you so much.